There comes a moment in every life when silence speaks louder than words, when absence says more than presence, and when walking away is not an escape but a declaration that you finally understand your value, a declaration that your soul was not made to be trampled. You see, we are taught from a young age to be kind, to be patient, to turn the other cheek. And yes, those are noble truths, but somewhere along the way we confuse kindness with allowing people to dishonor us. We confuse patience with tolerating repeated disrespect. We confuse love with losing ourselves just to keep someone else comfortable. What if I told you that walking away is not giving up? What if it is actually stepping into the life God always intended for you? What if it's not an act of pride, but an act of faith? Because the truth is, if they don't respect you, staying will not change them. It will only change you. It will wear down your spirit, silence your voice, and dull the shine of who you were meant to be. So today, we're not just talking about walking away. We're talking about walking into freedom, walking into healing, and walking into the full truth of your worth. Your worth is not determined by how others see you or treat you. It is not rooted in human opinion, applause, or approval. True self-worth comes from the one who created you. Before anyone ever labeled you, before the world ever formed an opinion about you, God had already declared your value. You were formed in the quiet places of the womb, intricately designed by divine hands and spoken into existence with purpose and care. That is where your worth begins, not in the broken words of people, not in the judgmental stares of others, and certainly not in the disrespect of those who fail to see your light. When people fail to respect you, it can shake your confidence and rattle your spirit. You begin to wonder if you've done something wrong, if perhaps you're not good enough, smart enough, strong enough, or beautiful enough. But these are lies whispered by insecurity and fueled by a world that measures worth with shallow standards. The truth is that your value has already been set, and it is not up for negotiation. You are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that is not a poetic line, it is a spiritual fact. You are not an accident, you are not a mistake, you are not disposable, you are a masterpiece, signed by the Creator Himself. Too often, we hand over the pen of our identity to people who were never meant to write our story. We allow their disrespect, their rejection, and their silence to define us. But human disrespect does not cancel divine design. Just because someone doesn't recognize your worth doesn't mean you don't have it. Just because they don't appreciate your presence doesn't mean it isn't powerful. You were chosen, you were seen, you were loved before you were ever known. Learning to rest in that truth changes everything. It means you no longer chase validation from those who refuse to give it. You stop shrinking to fit into rooms that cannot contain your calling. You stop apologizing for existing, for dreaming, for feeling, and for believing. You no longer allow the lack of respect from others to diminish the boldness of your soul. Instead, you begin to walk in a quiet confidence, not arrogance, not pride, but a grounded sense of who you are in the eyes of God. Respect from others is a blessing, but it is not a requirement for your worth. It is good to be honored, but it is better to be grounded in a truth that doesn't shift when people change. You are not for everyone, and that's okay. The right people will honor you. The right spaces will embrace you. And when you know your worth, you stop begging for tables that were never built for you. You stand tall, not because others lift you up, but because your value is rooted in something eternal, unshakable, and unchanging. That is the foundation of true self-worth. That is where your peace begins. Respect is more than politeness or good manners. It is a reflection of love and truth. Where there is genuine love, there is also a deep respect, a recognition of another person's value, dignity, and humanity. And where truth is honored, respect flows naturally, because truth does not manipulate, belittle, or tear down. It lifts up, protects, and builds. When someone respects you, they are saying with their actions, I see you, I hear you, you matter. And when they don't, they are sending a message just as loud, your voice doesn't count, your presence isn't valued. We live in a time when love is often spoken of loudly but lived out poorly. People say they care, yet their actions are soaked in control, sarcasm, silence, or disregard. But love that lacks respect is not love at all. It may be obsession, it may be dependency, it may be emotional confusion, but it is not love. Love will not constantly question your worth. Love will not ignore your boundaries or dismiss your pain. Love, in its purest form, honors. It listens. It protects. And respect is one of its clearest signs. Likewise, truth cannot dwell comfortably where respect is missing. If someone claims to speak truth but does so with arrogance, cruelty, or contempt, that truth becomes distorted. Truth, when it comes from a place of divine wisdom, is delivered with grace. It may challenge you, it may convict you, but it will not crush your spirit or strip you of your worth. There is a difference between correction and condemnation. One builds, the other breaks. True respect knows that difference and lives it out in every relationship. When a person consistently disrespects you, they are not just making a mistake. They are revealing what they truly believe about you, and sometimes about themselves. A heart that cannot respect others is often wounded or proud, but their brokenness does not excuse their behavior. You are not required to absorb someone else's inability to honor you. You are not called to stay where truth is twisted and love is used as a weapon. Respect is not a bonus. It is a baseline for healthy connection. This is why it is so important to pay attention to how you are treated. Words can be sweet, but if the tone behind them is cold or dismissive, something is off. Promises can sound good, but if they are never followed by action, they lose their weight. Real respect is not about flattery or grand gestures. It is shown in consistency, in care, in how someone treats you when they gain nothing from it. It shows up in listening, in honoring your space, in speaking to you without belittling you. If there is no respect, there is no real love. And if there is no truth, there is no lasting connection. Respect is the soil where relationships grow. Without it, even the most passionate feelings will eventually fade into resentment. So never settle for words without weight, love without honor, or truth without grace. You were made for more. God never calls you to remain in places that destroy your peace, your dignity, or your sense of worth. While we are often taught to endure, to forgive, and to show grace, and these are indeed holy and necessary virtues, there is a difference between endurance and entrapment. There is a difference between turning the other cheek and allowing yourself to be trampled. When a space consistently robs you of your spiritual, emotional, or even physical well-being, that is not a test of faith, it is a signal to move. Scripture is full of moments where God leads his people out of places that were no longer meant for them. He led Abraham out of his homeland. He led the Israelites out of Egypt. Even Jesus, full of compassion, did not remain where he was mocked, misunderstood, or violently rejected. He did not force his presence into places that resisted truth. There is divine precedent for walking away when a place no longer aligns with the purpose God has placed within you. Sometimes we confuse suffering with sanctification. We assume that staying in harmful relationships or toxic environments is somehow a sign of spiritual strength or loyalty. But God is not glorified in your suffering if that suffering comes from cycles of disrespect, abuse, or manipulation. He does not delight in your pain. He does not call you to lose yourself while trying to fix what someone else refuses to change. God is a deliverer, not an enabler of oppression. There will be seasons when he calls you to stay and work things out, yes, but there are also seasons when he calls you to walk away for the sake of your soul. And when that moment comes, it is not rebellion, it is wisdom. It is obedience. It is faith in action. You are not meant to be loyal to dysfunction. You are not called to be faithful to a place that breaks you in the name of patience. God will never ask you to sacrifice your God-given identity just to preserve someone else's comfort. The truth is, some environments cannot hold what God has placed inside you. Some people are not capable of receiving the fullness of who you are becoming, and when their inability to understand you turns into consistent dishonor, that is a sign not of your failure, but of a spiritual misalignment. God brings clarity through peace, and when peace leaves the room, it may be because God is calling you to leave as well. Your life is too valuable, your calling too precious, and your spirit too fragile to be wasted in a place God is no longer blessing. When He says go, don't hesitate. When He says enough, trust Him. You do not need to explain it to everyone. You do not need their permission. You only need His voice, His leading, and the courage to follow. Because when God calls you out, it's never to punish, it's to protect, to preserve, and to prepare you for something better. Walking away is often misunderstood. People see it as weakness, as pride, as giving up. But in truth, walking away can be one of the most powerful and obedient acts of faith you will ever take. It is not always about ego. It is not always about proving a point or making a statement. Sometimes walking away is a quiet declaration that you trust God more than you trust your own need to be understood, accepted, or liked. There comes a point when staying becomes more damaging than leaving, when you begin to lose your peace, your joy, your identity, and the sound of your own voice. Those are signs that God may be calling you to let go, not because you're angry, not because you're bitter, but because continuing to stay would mean disobeying the deep knowing inside of you that says this is not where you belong anymore. It takes more strength to walk away from what is familiar than to stay where you're being diminished. It takes courage to leave when you have nothing else but faith to carry you. But obedience does not always feel comfortable. It often demands sacrifice. And one of the greatest sacrifices you will ever make is choosing peace over popularity, purpose over pressure, and truth over tolerance of disrespect. When you walk away in obedience, you are not rejecting people. You are responding to a higher calling. You are choosing to align yourself with what God has for you, not what people expect from you. And that can be lonely, that can be painful, but it is sacred. Because some doors do not close by force, they close by decision. People may not understand your silence. They may question your distance. They may say you changed. But they don't see the prayers you've prayed. They don't feel the weight you've carried. They don't know how many nights you sat in confusion, asking God if you were the problem, wondering if you were asking for too much, begging Him to fix what seemed unfixable. And in the quiet, God answered, not always with a fix, but with freedom. Sometimes His answer is not fight for it. Sometimes His answer is release it. Walking away does not mean you've stopped loving. It means you've started listening to God, to your spirit, to the wisdom He's placed within you. It means you understand that love without boundaries becomes bondage. It means you trust that what God removes, He can replace, and what He ends, He can redeem. Your walk may not be loud, it may not be dramatic, but it can be holy. So when the time comes, walk away with grace, walk with peace in your heart, walk with no need to justify or defend, because when you walk in obedience, you are walking toward restoration, not ruin, toward healing, not heartbreak, and most of all, toward the future God has already prepared for you. Boundaries are not a sign of weakness, selfishness, or lack of love. They are a mark of wisdom. They are the lines we draw to protect what God has entrusted to us, our peace, our purpose, our emotional health, and our spiritual clarity. In a world that often glorifies endless availability and praises those who give without limit, it's easy to forget that even the most generous love needs structure to survive. Too many people are drowning in relationships, workplaces, and friendships where the absence of boundaries has led to burnout, bitterness, and confusion. They stay silent to keep the peace. They say yes when everything in them is crying out for rest. They tolerate dishonor because they fear being seen as unkind. But what they often don't realize is that every time you allow someone to cross a line that should have been drawn, you teach them how to treat you. Silence becomes permission, tolerance becomes acceptance. Even Jesus set boundaries. He withdrew to quiet places. He didn't allow everyone into his inner circle. He didn't chase after those who walked away. He loved deeply, but he loved with discernment. He knew when to speak, when to heal, when to confront, and when to walk on. That's not indifference, that's divine wisdom in action. If the Son of God understood the power of boundaries, how much more should we? There is a lie that says being a good person means always being available, always giving, always saying yes. But love without limits is not sustainable. If you constantly give without refilling, eventually you will have nothing left to offer. Boundaries are how we honor ourselves and others. They help us love from a healthy place, not from guilt or exhaustion. They are not walls to shut people out, but gates to let the right things in and keep the damaging things out. People may not like your boundaries. They may push back. They may accuse you of changing, of being cold, of no longer caring. But the truth is, boundaries reveal who is willing to love you in a healthy way, and who is only attached to your availability, not your actual well-being. And when you set a boundary and someone gets angry, that's not a sign you've done something wrong. It's a sign that the boundary was long overdue. God did not create you to be drained, disrespected, or taken for granted. He calls you to love, but He also calls you to guard your heart. That's not a contradiction, that's balance. And in that balance, you find peace, you find clarity, you find the strength to stop explaining and start living in alignment with your worth. So don't be afraid to draw lines. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to step back when respect is not mutual. Boundaries are not barriers to love. They are bridges to healthier, more honest, and more God-honoring relationships. Letting go is one of the hardest things you will ever do, especially when your heart was fully invested, when your intentions were pure, and when you tried everything you knew to make it work. But there are moments in life when holding on does more harm than good, and the only path forward is to release what is no longer growing, no longer honoring, no longer meant for your next season. Letting go is not failure, it is not giving up. It is often the first step toward true healing and deeper growth. There is pain in release because it feels like loss, but not all loss is bad. Some losses are actually divine redirections. Sometimes, in order for God to do a new thing in your life, He must first clear away the old things that are in the way, and that includes people, patterns, places, and mindsets that have kept you stuck. The things that once brought comfort may become cages, and when that happens, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to open the door and walk out. When you let go of what disrespects you, you are not being cruel. You are being honest. You are saying to yourself, I deserve to be treated with dignity. I deserve peace. I deserve space to become who God created me to be. You are making room in your life for what aligns with your values, your calling, and your healing. You are choosing wholeness over chaos, and that is a choice heaven honors. Growth rarely happens in comfort. It happens in the stretching, in the releasing, in the walking away from what once felt safe, but now feels suffocating. It happens when you trust that God is not only behind you, wiping your tears, but ahead of you, preparing something greater. Every ending carries the seed of a new beginning, but you cannot step into the new if your hands are still clinging to what is gone. Letting go doesn't always come with closure. It doesn't always make sense to others. It doesn't always feel fair. But healing doesn't wait for justice. It waits for decision. A decision to stop rehearsing the pain. A decision to stop shrinking in spaces that no longer see your worth. A decision to stop waiting for someone else to do what you can do. Walk away and begin again. And as you let go, you will find that clarity returns, strength returns, the sound of your own voice returns. You begin to remember who you are without the weight of what was never meant to stay. You begin to dream again, to breathe again, to hope again. That's what letting go unlocks. Not just distance from what hurt you, but a new direction toward what will heal you. So trust the release. Trust the space it creates. Trust that when you walk away from disrespect, you are walking toward the life you are always meant to live. Letting go isn't the end. It's the beginning of becoming whole. In the end, choosing to walk away when respect is no longer present is not an act of rebellion, but of revelation. It reveals that you finally understand your worth, that you recognize love must come with honor, and that your peace is far too valuable to be sacrificed for the comfort of others. You were not created to live beneath the weight of disrespect, or in places where your light is dimmed, just to make others feel comfortable. You were created with purpose, with dignity, and with a calling that demands environments of truth, honor, and peace. Walking away is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the moment you stop waiting for others to value you and start living like you are already valued by the one who made you. It is strength clothed in stillness, faith wrapped in quiet courage. And while not everyone will understand your decision, heaven does. Heaven celebrates when you choose wholeness over woundedness and growth over familiarity. So to everyone listening, may you have the courage to walk away when needed, the grace to do it in love, and the wisdom to know that letting go is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a better one. Thank you for opening your heart, for reflecting deeply, and for daring to believe that you are worth more than empty words and broken patterns. May your path be filled with clarity, your soul be wrapped in peace, and your future be richer than your past. Good luck on your journey forward, and may God bless you every step of the way.